All that stands between the action here, here, or here, and seeing it here is the magic of human ingenuity and the power of advanced software solutions. You and your team deliver the joy, the drama, the heart here, and here too. You've shown us what this media landscape can look like when you combine technology with passion, innovation, and a thirst for a perfect viewing experience. Leading media innovators like you inspire us to find better ways to make and monetize TV, to fully embrace the potential of IP for greater agility and faster time to revenue, to develop next-gen ad tech that delivers the best of linear at the speed of digital, and to implement cloud-based solutions that streamline workflows from playout to payout. Every day, we take on diverse projects that range from the routine to the revolutionary, helping you navigate new platforms and deliver the best experience everywhere, every time, without worrying about what's happening behind the curtain. You've always been the magic maker. We just give you the spark.
Hey, this is Alan Wolk. I am the co-founder and lead analyst at TVOT. We're here for what promises to be a really interesting panel because it's something a little bit different. It's called How to Catalyze Audience-Based Selling in the US, something my dog clearly does not approve of. And what, just to sort of lay it out for those of you who might not be familiar with it, audience-based or automated selling is obviously quite common in streaming and other areas. And outside of the US, it's often how linear TV is sold. In the US, because, especially with local stations, because they're all sort of, in a specific geographic area, that hasn't really caught on. So we're going to discuss why that is, what the advantages are, and how to make it happen. So we've got a really great panel here today, which I'm hoping is going to pop on right now. Here they go. See how the magic of television? And I am going to let them all introduce themselves. We've got 5 great panelists. I'm going to go around the Brady Bunch circle here with Jeff Eels.
Hi, yeah, Jeff Eels. I work for Sky Media. I'm the director of systems and strategy there, and have been working for over 17 years at Sky. Recent things have been the implementation of AdSmart 4 or 5 years ago, the linear addressable platform that we implemented, and just recently we on the 1st of January we launched One Campaign, which is very topical, Alan, because it's taking selling audience for linear and selling audience for linear and non-linear together with a single bill, single measurement, and single pricing.
Okay, next up we have Kelly Perrone.
Hi, everyone. Kelly Perrone. I'm the head of product for Effective. We're the ad sales division of Comcast Cable. We really have been focusing on bringing audience to our advertisers and partners over the last couple of years. Look forward to the conversation today.
And then we have Andrew Troy from Dish.
It's funny, it's taken 14 months, but still to locate that mute button has always been a challenge. Good afternoon, Andrew Troy, Dish Media. I'm General Manager of Sales, primarily responsible for driving revenue and partnerships across key holding companies such as Publicis, where Eric is, Horizon Media, IPG, and Group M.
And now we have Eric Kavanaugh.
Hi. Yeah, thanks, Alan. I'm the SVP of cross-platform audience measurement for Publicis Media. And really, that's just a fancy term for research. But this is a great panel to be on because right now we're talking a lot about, this digital transformation that we're all going through, especially in the linear space. So I'm excited to be part of the panel today.
Okay, and last but not least, we have Graham Heap from Imagine.
Hi, yeah, Graham Heap. So I'm the Senior Director of Strategy and Product Management on the ad tech side of the Imagine business. My background is in, kind of building sales, traffic, optimization software in a global context. And for, 26 years now, we've been developing systems that support the kind of models that we're going to be talking about. And I've made it public on many occasions that it's kind of my career goal to make sure that the US takes a little bite out of this because I think there's a lot of value in it. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Okay, well, I'm gonna start with you, Graham. Audience-based buying is a big thing, outside of the U.S. But what's some of the hesitancy in the U.S. and what are you telling these people as you noted your goals to kind of get them to kind of come around to your side? But so what are some of the things you tell them?
Well, on the hesitancy side, I mean, it's it's a huge market. It has a very well-established trading model in the linear space. It's a very fragmented market, lots of buyers, lots of sellers. So, it's probably the most challenging market globally to take this on. But, I don't think that should stop us from making the initial steps towards it. And maybe we'll get to the idea of, how do you make these kind of transitions? But there's benefits to be found. We've seen other markets that have taken the journey from kind of the traditional kind of spot sort of dual commitment of spot and audience over to committing to the audience and optimizing it. And there's benefits on both sides. There's benefits for the buyers, there's benefits for the sellers. Making TV easier to trade is probably the single most important facet of audience-based sales, because that's going to really help our customers, you guys, kind of prop up your long-term sustainability in a market that is evolving fast. The other major kind of benefit, and Jeff talked about this in his little preamble about One Campaign, I think that getting to an audience-based sell on the traditional TV linear side is a leaping off point to cross-platform sales, because if you can get people comfortable with buying audience on the linear side, it's going to be much easier to glue together the multi-platform sell. So that's kind of why I think there's a lot of value here.
Okay, Jeff, can you tell us a little bit more about this one audience, and then just also sort of what are some of the positives you're seeing having sold it that way over in UK?
Yeah, so we transitioned quite some while ago. So when I was a sales guy for Granada TV, I was selling spots to a rate card, to a ladder rate card. We had preemptions where you effectively sell the same spot 10 times to 5 or 6 different buyers, and it's kind of it might be all right if you're selling one channel, but if you see the expansion in spots that we've had over the last 15, 20 years, where we're now in their millions, not their thousands, you kind of have to have an automated system. So we transitioned probably about 20 years ago into an audience-based sell, where you effectively get rid of the rate card, and you enable people to buy a variety of audiences that you believe that you can trade within a discounted framework, which effectively kind of prices up day parts. It kind of prices up channels, and it also prices up, particularly for Sky, it prices up our Crown and Cream inventory of Game of Thrones and the Premier League. So to all intents and purposes, it can actually replace what we would all refer to as the make good. Okay, I mean, there is this thing about you set a rate, the buyer will say, okay, for that rate, for the amount of audience I think it's going to get, it's really good, and it doesn't quite get to that, so the buyer's on the phone saying, can I have a make good, please? Well, sometimes that original target was never agreed. Don't necessarily know what audience they're buying, so you're not really sure whether or not you should be replacing it or not. All that goes with audience-based selling. You agree where the target is, you agree the audience, and you agree to deliver, and that's really important. Really important that you've got to give the agency the reassurance and the guarantee that you will deliver what you say you're going to deliver when you deliver, and the pricing when you start it can be a little tricky. Okay, there are some months where it goes very well, some months where it goes less well. You can get contention. All of those things still exist, but as Graham says, it is a win-win. The win-win is that how much you're guaranteeing, and the agency knows how much they're expecting to be delivered in a timely fashion across strike weights and across day parts, across channels. And if you do that, it means a good proportion of your inventory can be automated. So we have something like 85% of our spot inventory is sold automatically. It's run by an engine, and it works very, very well. And So from that point of view, we're able to send schedules to agencies on a daily basis. It's important that you're incredibly transparent, that you say, that all those spots are, when they're placed, are placed in the right place, the right time, and then the agencies get to see them. So it's important to have transparency. That's a really key piece, and it's important to have a metric that you all believe in. So if you have a minute-by-minute sales metric, whether it's day +1, day +7, all of those things still maintain. But it does mean to say that pretty much every single day, the buyer and seller know exactly where the campaigns are, and the seller might well be already replacing spots and making the spots before the buyer even knows that's happening, which is great, I hope, for them. And of course, it's within constraints. Of course, it's within day parts. You can't just put any spot anywhere you like, because an agency wouldn't buy that. So you take a pretty complex brief. But nowadays, the systems are more than capable of taking complex briefs for where not to go, where definitely to go, and where the sweet spots are.
Right. So you just quick follow up on that. You had said 85% is sold that way. What's special about that other 15%?
I'm talking about the 15% of spots, which is often 30 to 40% of your money, okay, which is in premium. There is no question that premium video and premium content is still, buying the first in break for Man U versus Chelsea is still going to be a conversation. Okay, that is, it's our cream. But behind that, there is an audience guarantee and price for that particular spot. So you're not pricing the spot, you're pricing the audience. Okay. Gotcha. And if that game goes better, then that's great. It means that the buyer wins and we get to remove some airtime. Okay, because you kind of balance it, and the system balances that out. And if it doesn't do so well, then the system immediately knows that it needs a shortfall, and we need to place spots on. It doesn't mean to say that there are still salespeople getting involved, talking to buyers. It does not remove those conversations, but it does remove the if you know where that guarantee is and you know what you're both trying to get to, then you can try to achieve that hopefully without too much discourse.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Kelly, so I'm just curious what your POV on it is, and maybe if you can explain to the audience a little bit what Effective does, where you fit in the ecosystem, kind of.
Thank you, Alan. Effective as the ad sales division of Comcast really brings audiences to local cable buyers. And we've been on a journey for the last few years to move into a position where we're not just talking about the premium content, the sports, the news nets that we can offer our clients, but we start talking about the audiences that are watching them and the diversity of experience every one of those homes bring to the table. And we currently are in a position where we have optionality now in the ways in which we trade with our customers. Yes, we still offer spot sales. Yes, we can still guarantee on a per spot basis or a Nielsen measurement metric. But we also have the ability to start talking about, that in market for a new car buyer that's within a 50-mile drive radius of your rooftop. And how they watch is different than what our agency buyers anticipate and expect. So when you bring that power of sort of viewership information and the data behind it into even a spot execution, what's purchased looks different. How we optimize is more about making sure we get better reach and frequency to folks who are really watching those spots. And recently, we've gone into a pilot with a product we call Audience Addressable, which is a great partnership with FreeWill. Charter, another MVPD in the United States, offers this, which is the ability to guarantee impression-based delivery in an addressable fashion to that audience everywhere they're watching. Moving fully away from, I'm only buying spots, to I'm really buying audience, and there's a cost to that audience, and there's a pattern for where and when and how they're viewing that's very much data informed and can open up some of that transparency Jeff spoke of around where they were watching, when they were watching, and what happened to the marketer's outcomes, because now you can start to know that.
Gotcha. And that makes sense. Now, Andrew, you guys are interesting because Dish has been such an innovator in so much of, sort of automation buying and audience-based buying in particular. So just curious what your take on all this is and what you're seeing, in your local markets and all that.
Yeah, and Kelly and I play in very similar spaces. And just to add on to Jeff's comments, automation and impression-based buying and audience-based buying provides that level of accountability and precision that the ad community is truly craving. But yeah, we've been really ahead of the curve for really 11 years now. We were the first MVPD to launch a national addressable product, which is impression-based. But we're also a one-stop shop for multiple options, similar to Kelly. We have a linear option for those that want broad awareness and want to rely on that Nielsen rating and go program first. But we are ahead of the curve in embracing impression-based buying, whether through our addressable platform, which is a converged sale across our subscriber sets of Dish and Sling, as well as programmatic and direct IO offerings through audience-based through Sling only. So we've been doing programmatic for the past 4 years. We launched a programmatic platform through Sling TV in March of 2017. And I know Jeff referenced a lot of volume coming programmatically. We have, I would say, 60 to 65% of our sales come through the programmatic pipes. And why we offer that is we recognize the need for flexibility in the marketplace. We turn to our clients. Our clients have the option to choose of how they execute these deals, whether it's through managed service and filling out an RFP and us sending them a proposal, or going through a DSP or SSP to purchase inventory.
Gotcha. Now, I noticed you use the word programmatic, and a lot of times I've been told that media companies sort of shy away from that because it with certain buyers it has a really negative connotation. Do you think they kind of they basically track, for the audience to explain, they track it back to digital, and in digital there was this thing, programmatic equals race to the bottom. That's not really true in TV, but are you finding people are kind of getting more comfortable with that term now?
Absolutely. And yeah, I've heard the phrase of race to the bottom, and what we offer several options for both premium and run of network programming or audiences through Sling. We create several evergreen deals, whether it's sports, our run of network sports through ESPN, or specifically Monday Night Football, NCAA tournament packages, or NBA playoffs. So it's not necessarily in our world a race to the bottom or the call it underlying inventory. It is true premium inventory, no matter how we slice it. We offer our advertisers plenty of variety and options.
Right. Well, on digital, it sort of became that way because there is, almost an infinite number of websites that you can run an ad on, whereas in television, there's a very finite number of places the ads can run, or compared to digital. Anyway, now, Eric, I'm curious because you're on the agency side there, and you're sort of seeing this from all different angles. So, what are you hearing about all this, and what's sort of your POV?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Well, I appreciate what you said about there being, millions of websites out there and less on television. But what we're seeing often, especially in linear television, is those ratings are going down. And it's not that people aren't necessarily consuming that content. Of course, they're working across different platforms. And so I think that there's two potential solutions, right, to sort of wrangle all that inventory. And one is either you move to sort of a one common currency, you execute at a single point and transact accordingly. Or the other is to move to impression-based, audience-specific buying. And that has great appeal because we're not going to solve being local market experts by adding more people to cover. Well, you're in charge of linear, and you're in charge of digital, and you're in charge of local cable. We have to rely on more data. That's how we solve the proliferation of viewing, is through data. So we're certainly interested in transacting more on data-driven buys. Of course, I'm a researcher at heart, and my question then becomes, how do we sort of think about that? How do we make sure that we're trading on a common currency? If we are looking for auto intenders, Kelly, like in your example, how do we make sure that I know that you've got the right auto intenders, and we're getting to like some sort of shared knowledge base? That's what I want to make sure, that if we transact more on audiences, that we're all on the same page as to what those audiences entail.
Right. Now, is anybody?
I couldn't agree more.
Okay. Now, is anybody who's helping that? Helping with that? I know, like, OpenAP has started to do a little bit of work with that, but we do hear that a lot. That's a big problem. Is that some broadcasters may define, say, new moms as women with children under 6 months. Others, it may be women with children under 3 years, and brands are like, oh my God, how do I do apples to apples? So is anybody making your life easier in that regard? Eric. Oh.
Yeah, no. Appreciate that. Every little bit helps. I'm not going to be able to point to any specific examples, right, in terms of, in other words, there's no uniformity that we're seeing yet. But right. I think that through these types of initiatives, we're starting to learn more. I think sort of the challenge is that someone's best prospect on their property might be the best on their property, but it still might be worse than another properties. And so how do you see that in a more comparative way, not just in terms of the definitions, but in terms of the available inventory, right? So that's what we're really looking for.
So Eric, the way we've approached that with one campaign is we've created the methodology, which I hope you heard of, which is C-Flight. So we've created the C-Flight methodology, which enables cross-platform reach. We've actually gone the other way. So what we've done is to say, well, the linear audiences are still the majority of the audience. I appreciate what you're saying about audience trends, absolutely. But what we've done is use the first party data to then say, to map what we believe is the closest to the traditional barb audiences or the traditional buying audiences as a first step. So we think if we can get the first step done, then we can start to get to mosaics, and we can start to get to those standard definitions. And we're completely with you about standard definitions. So we take a set-top box household impression and create effectively a Nielsen or a Barb individual impression using the C-Flight methodology to look at co-viewing and number of people, propensity of that person to be in the room when you serve that ad. And we've combined the two, and it now means you can effectively, on a daily basis, see your delivery buying a single audience across linear and non-linear. And as far as we're concerned, it is, well, we do our very best to make sure that those definitions are in harmony. So I'm completely with you, and it's as far as we're concerned, it's the first step on that journey to A, sell audience fully on linear, and B, sell audience across the whole piece with a single measure. I think you're absolutely on the button.
Well, and that's a great point, Jeff, and I appreciate that, because I think that we want there's always going to be a place for third-party syndicated measurement to play a role in the transaction process. But it's clear with so many devices and so many options, so many audiences, it's a daunting task for any single entity to take on. So I think it's in partnership with third parties and publishers. That's where we start to see change in the marketplace, where we can sort of think about this through different data sources to come to that single source of truth where applicable.
And it's a journey. Okay. The other thing we've got to be careful, a little bit careful of is I think we know where we want to be. Okay. But where we want to be is there's a lot to do. Okay. And if we're not careful, we'll do nothing we'll do nothing while we're waiting for, you know, for something to happen. So our view was that we were going, you know, it's definitely the directionally where the agencies want us to be. So we thought we'd absolutely take that first step and harmonize with 10, well, actually we do 20 audiences, with 20 audiences that are available to buy across linear and non-linear using a single measure.
Right, Graham, you were about to jump in there.
No, I was just, you know, this is a fascinating topic. Obviously, as a vendor, we're just trying to stay as agnostic as possible as to whether there's a beautiful single currency that covers everything, or a hodgepodge of, you know, I have to stitch things together with different underlying currencies that we can only triangulate back through dollars, which is effectively the only thing that brings things. So we're trying to kind of cover all bases, which makes this, you know, pretty hard for us. But there's so many markets around the world wrangling with the same problem, right? You know, kind of Australia are pushing their OzTam stuff. Scandinavia's moved pretty far with its total TV definitions. Everyone's trying to kind of do the same thing. So at least it's good that we're all directionally going in the same way, right? So as I say, I don't think we can't certainly sit here and say we have the answers, but we're absolutely willing to get in the room and work on the solutions, because this is where, you know, I think we're all agreeing where we need to be.
Right, man. I know Nielsen has promised to do something by, I think, end of 2022. They have, they've announced it anyway. And iSpot has something called Total Audience that's starting to get some adoption that, that does cross-platform. But overall, I mean, Andrew, you guys sell cross. You have Sling and you have Dish. So, what are your thoughts on how that's going to play out?
Yeah, I mean, we currently use ComScore to measure all those impressions in a converged way. So our post-campaign reports are produced by ComScore, unifying the report across both subscriber sets. But I think the more the merrier. We believe in a total open marketplace. So we plug in to multiple partners to make sure that we're connected to the right platforms that our advertisers want. But I say, all on board for Nielsen and iSpot and other partners that come up with solutions to help with measurement.
Right. Do you think it'll be better to have multiple? In other words, there's pros and cons for having, for Nielsen having had this monopoly for so many years. Yes, it's the one thing everybody can agree on, but it often sort of stymied innovation, it seems.
Yeah, I agree, and they're definitely pivoting. For sure. I think it's a good thing to have multiple partners, because to that point, it just gives the advertiser and the vendor multiple options to measure the overall audience.
Right. Now, Kelly, you have similar too, because you guys have Peacock now to throw into the mix, and you have all the the various Comcast owned properties. What do you guys, and then you also have your own things that you're doing at NBCU around measurement. So can you talk about that a little bit? Yeah.
So with Effective is very proud and happy that Peacock's been able to launch. Wish NBC all the best, but we're not representing their supply in the ad sales marketplace.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize. Okay.
Yep. But what I will say is that from a Comcast advertising perspective, there's sort of a few things that we really hold to be true. One is, as we move into a place where data matters so much and understanding what we would like to do and what did happen, privacy has to come first. Privacy of subscribers, privacy of information being shared between buyers and sellers, whether that's upfront during a programmatic execution or on the back end during measurement of specific outcomes for the advertiser. And two, we really want to make sure that folks understand that as we go on this journey that Jeff talked about, with a move from buying spots focused on an overall Nielsen measured eCPM, where tonnage and the financial benefit of make good weight tips the scales, we actually aim the conversation into what's the outcome you want to achieve, what's the right mix of media that will get you the audience that drives that outcome. And as you move from awareness into consideration and intent tactics, how to be more first less data driven, but two, more flexible in sort of what used to be true in the gold standard, so that a spirit of experimentation comes out and an evolution can take place. Because when you move into a future that's an audience guarantee on a number of impressions at a CPM basis, whether it's programmatic or not, the value of what that audience brings to the marketer is where publishers really need to focus. And I think that's where Effective's really been aimed. As we broaden the toolkit that we can bring to our partners, we want to make sure that we're understanding which audience drives their outcome best and how can we best reach them. And it's not as much a conversation of premium content versus audience. Both ends are very much there. And so with that, that brings me to the next truth, which is that the level of measurement needs to be as diverse as possible. We need to be in a place where optionality is the standard, and we're away from having one or two sources of truth that we all sort of compromise and settle on.
I think, Kelly, the other thing is, and Eric talked about third party. We're so used to a third party being effectively outside of the business, enabling agencies to be assured of what we're saying, which I completely get. But privacy and the first party data clearly doesn't allow us to do that. So we've got to have another solution. And for me, the only solution is to talk about the definition of an impression. Okay, so that to say that that there are kind of lies, damn lies, and definitions would be an understatement. We would happily work towards a true definition of a 100% viewed impression, fully in full screen, okay, audio on, and no fast forwarding, and say that would be our definition of a single impression. That's what we're selling you, Eric. Okay, and we will not sell or trade with you on any other basis. And that seems to me what premium video or impressions need to do. Okay, so we effectively have, to what you're saying, Kelly, is a gold standard. We know what a gold standard impact is because Nielsen and Barb have been trading those for years and years. You don't have that in impressions yet, and I think we need to try to get there.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, while I have you, I was curious, where is the UK now in terms of what you all call privacy? In other words, I know, clearly your GDPR, once Brexit happened, were you released from GDPR, or are you still signatories to it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the GDPR regulations still maintain. There have been. We might be outside of Europe, but the privacy regulations are absolutely the same, and may, of course, now might be, as the UK government decides, might get more intricate. So no, there's been absolutely no change. First, the customer data is completely sacrosanct. We have to be good to that, just as Kelly is saying. We're not messing around with customer data at all.
Gotcha. So I wanted to change. First off, I want us to make a plea to the audience. If you guys have any questions for the panel, please, there's a way to type them in there. So hit us up. I wanted to talk to you the very specifics of this. Like, one of the interesting things to me about the U.S. local market is sort of just the range of it, or the diversity of it. In other words, sometimes you have these really small markets where the local TV station is almost sort of the ad agency as well, right? And their clients are not big brands. Their clients are like, the local yoga studio and the local car dealership, and they're building websites for them and they're bringing them online. And then you have, Chicago and Los Angeles, where it's this huge market. So bringing this around to the specific question here, one of the things that we hear sometimes from the people who are actually being asked to implement the audience-based buying is this real fear that they're giving up control by doing this. In other words, that they have such tight relationships and such tight control over everything, and so much stuff is even still done by hand for a lot of them. Because there just isn't that much volume. Like, how do you respond to that, Graham? What do you tell them?
I mean, I still think that, there's still value. Just because there's lower value or lower kind of so per spot, rates are lower or whatever. There's still a lot of heavy lifting that has to go on, and making TV easier to buy at all levels, I think, should be an ambition, right? So I don't think that they should preclude themselves because of their, of their scale.
Right. And do you think also, I mean, there's a strong argument that I've heard. It them up. You have to sort of pursue. They're not handling. If you're not handling every single deal, you're automating a lot of it, and actually frees you up to sort of pursue other clients.
Yeah. So to Jeff's earlier point on the 80-20 or 85-15. If you can automate the 85, you can go and work on the high value and the important, what would I call it, the white glove service that needs to go around that, that top tier of what you've got to sell and the top tier of the customers that want to buy it. So, spend your time in that 15% and have the machines do as Jeff said, a careful. It's not a free for all audience chase in the long tail, but it's let the machines do the do the hard work in that 85%.
So Kelly, during the one of the things we've also heard about the pandemic was that suddenly people became very aware of the value of localizing spots. In other words, you had this thing going on that was called, the hammer and the dance, where basically people, I didn't make that up, but I thought it was a good analogy. Different areas would open up and close down asynchronously. And if you were a brand, sometimes you had to run one ad to one region and another ad to another region. Suddenly they kind of became very aware of the value of local and localized advertising. And one, I was just curious if you saw that with your clients, and two, if you think it'll continue sort of once things start opening up again.
So I think that the 14 months that we've all sort of had in the U.S. With this new experience did a couple of things. One, it absolutely showed both sales and buyers that having a local mindset rather than a one-size-fits-all mindset is the right way to approach media planning and buying. Right. Secondly, I think it really opened folks up to, I need to reach my audience. And guess what? Audiences change the way they watch dramatically.
Yeah.
Video on demand, through the roof, more live viewing, more parts of the day. The behaviors of consumers changed. And even at month 14, some of those patterns of behavior are still evident in the data that we're seeing from our set-top boxes when you look at it in aggregate. So right. We really have an opportunity now to sort of bring both of those things together. One, stop thinking in monolithic terms around where should your ad be seen and does one piece of creative sort of fit all, and invest in that connection of the message and who it is you're trying to reach. And one of the things that Effect has really benefited from is having Mnemonic, sort of our creative agency in-house that can help our customers navigate that need. And two, particularly in those local markets, and two, to really lean on audience and get folks spending more in digital, spending more in on demand, and start to look at the way that audience is behaving very holistically. And I think that's going to help speed a level of comfort, particularly in smaller markets or with those smaller agencies, to be open to transacting on an impression that's applied across all screens. And it may eventually end up with a single bill that looks very much like what Jeff talked about.
Right. But
I don't think we have to wait for perfection to really meet consumers where they are and get marketers the outcomes they need.
Right. Now I'm gonna swing that around, but I just wanted to pull that out because I think that's a really key point, that too often as this market is changing so rapidly, we can't let great be the enemy of good. We can't sort of wait for perfection because you're not going to get everything lined up before it changes again. So we need to sort of be able to sort of take a few risks. So Andrew, since you're in the same sort of thing that Dish has a sort of a range of properties there, were you guys seeing that too with a sort of renewed interest in local?
I mean, not so much more local. It was more interest on a connected TV standpoint with Sling. The past 14 months have definitely been a challenge. It hit our business just as much as it hit everybody else's. And I know, my CRO, Kevin Eriks, was on one of these panels a couple of days ago, and he talked about, planning for audience-based buying a lot sooner during the process. And that's also too what we've been talking about in the marketplace. But we saw a lot of success both from a national and a local perspective through Sling, and having that flexibility for our partners to transact in a impression-based programmatic environment, because it does lead really to that overall flexibility in the marketplace.
Right. And Eric, what about you guys? What was Publicis seeing?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. I think when you think about a local investment, there's all sorts of things to look at, but one of them is an old standby: supply and demand, right? And so that's often expressed as, what's the pricing like, what's the viewership like, and that's sort of the balance, right? If there's high viewership, you got a lot of supply out there. If there's not a lot of people advertising, it's demand. But over the past 14 months, like Kelly pointed out, things were a little bit different. And I think we went away from looking at, just gross rating points relative to cost to really a more audience-focused view. What were people doing, right? It's not enough to just say this is what viewership is, but people going outside. What are the local ordinances in effect for this state or this county and this DMA? What's the unemployment like? What are we seeing in terms of people with mobility? Are they going out to eat? Are they allowed to go out to eat? And so we were able to put together, I think, a much more nuanced view of investment through an audience standpoint, versus just sort of, I think, media-centric metrics.
Gotcha. Jeff, what about in the UK? How does that, it's obviously just, you're all in one time zone, but,
well, the launch of AdSmart has opened the market up to, to large, small businesses local for us is Newcastle. Okay. Right. Local for you is, I don't know, Texas, I don't know, or whatever. Yeah. So they are, it is kind of, we're playing in slightly different fields, but there's absolutely no question that the success of addressability or addressable is the fact that you can have a business like Newcastle Taxis making a really neat little animatic where they're talking about £5 to £10 for each of their transactions, and they get into on a big screen. They get there's no question that TV is trusted, and you kind of get each brand gets its own adjacency that, because the big brands are on there and you've got a relatively small brand against a big brand, you get that feeling of it must be good. I'll try this out because it's on these guys are playing with if you like, the traditional big boys. And then of course you get the other end, which is, the high-end cars, the high-end cars. We've there was one car we had was worth nearly £250,000, but I think it's the only time where the product costs more than the media spend, which is but interesting enough, on both those very, very different scales, both worked incredibly well. The other thing I think we have to look at seriously is ad load. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That is. Again, it is the kind of, if you like, the linear 3-minute break, needs to be broken down in a VOD experience, so that because there's no question that right ad in the right place to the right person works way better than an ad that isn't, and we know that, and so everything we're doing is towards that, just making that better. And to Graham's point, the plan, when the planners plan, I'm not a planner, but I do know, I have spoken, they are planning to get to the best audience of the best. They are trying to do what we're doing, but the trouble is they don't have that flexibility to look at the spots every single day, because they just don't, because there's just too many of them. So effectively, the algorithm that we use, I think, is doing that. It is reevaluating the audience every day, and it's reevaluating the campaign every day where we know we can. or where the agency have allowed us to go automate. And we call it automation, not programmatic. Programmatic from us is DSPs and SSPs.
Right. So basically what you're saying is that because it's sort of almost optimizing, right, for,
Absolutely. Optimizing all the time, with new ratings coming in every day, re-predicting, having prediction models that predict as best as we can, because there's no point in us over predicting, because all we do is then undeliver. That doesn't work. We have to have the trust of the agency to know that if we're going to guarantee delivery, we do it. Now, it doesn't always work all the time, because life isn't like that. So when there is a problem, you get on the phone to the agency before they see it, hopefully, and talk about what you're going to do about it. Okay. But a lot of the time now, we're quite proud of what we've done to hone the Autobook modules to work differently at Easter, to Christmas, to the algorithm is modified quite a bit during the year, because guess what, we do different things during the year, surprise, and the audience changes. But we load new audiences into the system literally every day, 9 a.m. in the morning, and then repredict for the next 10 weeks. So we try to keep the data as best predicted as possible, so that we get a very good view of the delivery of all the campaigns. So we want to do exactly the same for nonlinear.
Gotcha. Kelly, I see you're sort of nodding along with it. I take it that's your experience as well. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I think the only thing I would add to the conversation is that, to circle us back to that transition, right? And Eric, it was awesome to sort of hear that in your organization, you took a slightly different approach in thinking about the media investments with that audience lens. And I just reiterate Jeff's point about we need a definition of an impression that we agree to and align to. When we talk about addressability, that's when only the homes that belong to your audience see your ad. And that's very different than audience selling on an impression basis, where homes that may not be within your audience are going to see your ad. You will bring additional eyeballs, just like spot delivery allows today when you're measuring on a Nielsen impression. But the conversation that we've not yet had as an industry is, what happens when on a spot execution you guarantee on impressions delivered to which audiences, known by who? And if we're ever going to get there, these are the kinds of conversations that we need to have with that, because the AdSmart system is super sophisticated, repredicting new audiences on an ongoing basis. It's also rooted, I think, Jeff, if my memory is right, in addressability and uniqueness of message. And so I think there's some complications on the US soil that we just have to acknowledge and start talking about.
The reprediction is all in linear as well. It's across the board. It's across the board.
Right. That's interesting too, because one of the things that we hear too is that there is some confusion about the word, about sort of what addressability is, right? Because you have sort of the pure addressability that, say, Dish was doing, where you're targeting specific audiences, but then on streaming, you have a lot of times where they're doing sort of incremental reach, where it's just like, okay, we're going to use Pluto or Hulu or somebody to sort of hit more people in this Nielsen demo that we want to hit, versus using our own first party data or other specific data to hit those specific audiences. So there's sort of a range of addressable that's out there, and sort of addressability in terms of how narrow you can get with who you're hitting. And a lot of that, again, seems to be from on the agency side. Are you talking to people who came from digital, and they have these very, very narrow, Eric's going, yeah. These very, very narrow targets that they're used to hitting, or people who come from TV who are like, yeah, women 18 to 49. That's all. That's addressable enough. So it should be interesting. I'm getting the hook here that we're out of time. So I want to thank you guys all very much. It's a really interesting conversation. Just really, this is sort of like where everything is kind of, sort of the rubber hits the road, if you will. That's a horrible cliche, but it's you know, this is really where all the stuff that's happening now is kind of playing out in a way that gets real. So thank you all for your insights on this, and back over to Tracy. Take care, guys. Bye bye.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Alan.